Aristotelian metaphysical background. Rene Descartes, 1596 to 1650, is one of the first major thinkers in the time of modern philosophy, which is standardly said to cover the 17th and 18th centuries. Descartes' ideas continue to interest and motivate contemporary philosophy, theory of knowledge, metaphysics, philosophy of the mind, philosophy of science, philosophy of mathematics, and philosophy of religion. Descartes was not only a philosopher, but a mathematician and scientist. He made contributions to all of these disciplines at a time when revolutionary developments in all branches of learning were being made. In mathematics, Descartes invented new uses for variables and a graphic method of representing algebraic relations on a two-dimensional grid of axes that have since come to known as Cartesian coordinates. Descartes' methods permitted him to clarify and solve long-standing problems in mathematics. He introduced a constructivist way of doing mathematics in which the proving of theorems from mathematical axioms become less important than solving problems by using mathematical instruments and rigorously building up mathematical systems from basic concepts. In natural science, Descartes made original findings in optics, physics, cosmology, biology, anatomy, and medicine. Although Descartes' scientific reputation has not withstood the test of time, as well as his work in mathematics, and has been in many ways superseded by the work of Isaac Newton and numerous others in ensuing centuries, it is still widely respected for its groundbreaking approach to the study of physical phenomena. The 17th century, emerging from the late Renaissance, laid the foundations for contemporary science and philosophy. Descartes is very much at the forefront of these developments that helped so dramatically to set the stage for today's scientific culture. Above all, Descartes is a philosopher. When he remarks, as he frequently and with great elaboration does in many of his philosophical treatises, on the nature of scientific method, he speaks as a philosopher, but with the experience of a practicing mathematician and scientist. He articulates an approach to the theory of knowledge from the standpoint not merely of an abstract familiarity with mathematics and science, but reflecting on his own years of successful inquiry in the field. Descartes' philosophy is one manifestation of a widespread intellectual current that gained extraordinary momentum in the 17th century. In order to understand the scientific and philosophical climate of which Descartes' thought is a vital part, we need to consider the Aristotelian background to Descartes' philosophy. We are already familiar with Aristotle, or maybe not, so please Google. And in particular, with these metaphysics of substance, you can check from the YouTube channel Samo't sa Simula, my own exposition of Aristotle's metaphysics of substance. Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy, the edition that we're using and commenting is this edition from the Oxford World's Classics, is evidently a response to Aristotle, as Descartes' choice of a distinctive Aristotelian phrase says it. First, philosophy. There. It would be hard to exaggerate the importance of Aristotle's influence on the course of science and philosophy between the Renaissance in the 15th and 16th centuries and the early part of the 17th century. Aristotle, that's his bust, and Aristotelianism, as it came to be interpreted in the teachings of Thomas Aquinas and other medieval thinkers, was the dominant philosophical school during the birth of early modern philosophy, when Descartes was beginning to make his mark in mathematics, science, and philosophy. Although we have also seen, and we will see, Occam was prepared to challenge Aristotle on many key points of his logic and metaphysics, the fact remains that Aristotle was the most highly regarded philosopher at the time when Descartes began to write. We also recall, and we will see in the commentaries that will follow on Occam, that Occam was driven from England to the protection of a German prince by the church's persecution, not only because of his free thinking about papal infallibility, but because he has criticized some of Aristotle's approved doctrinal teachings. Aristotle's scientific and philosophical writings almost disappeared in late antiquity, particularly after the burning in Roman times of the great library of Alexandria in Egypt. That Aristotle's philosophy survived at all and that his texts were available to be passed along the future generations is due to Arabic scholars who preserved many of Aristotle's most important works in translations and philosophical commentaries. Arabic culture, reaching from the Mid-East as far as Spain at the time, was in the glory days of its civilizations in the 14th and 15th centuries and had made numerous advances in the arts and sciences, especially engineering and medicine. Arabic thinkers concerned themselves with literature, philosophy, and fine art, and made great efforts to locate and translate into Arabic whatever documents could be found from the great civilizations of the past, including those of ancient Greece. When the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance reawakened to philosophy, Aristotle's writings were recovered by a new generation of thinkers who were hungry for knowledge from the past. The appearance of Aristotle's virtually complete system of thought made a powerful impact. The comprehensiveness of Aristotle's work and the depth of his philosophical reflections at the time caused many less independent thinkers to revere Aristotle's ideas as the work, or final work for that matter, on scientific questions. It is an oversimplification, but one that still makes an important point to say that after the re-emergence of Aristotle's writings in the 14th century, Aristotle was treated as an almost unquestioned authority in all secular intellectual matters. Contrary to scientific method, and especially to Aristotle's own commitment to empirical evidence as a way of discovering scientific truths, the early European Renaissance maintained an extraordinary degree of confidence in Aristotle's conclusions. Instead of conducting experiments or organizing observations to settle a scientific problem, or consulting Aristotle's text as a source of ideas with which to begin scientific inquiry, Renaissance humanism turned to Aristotle's writings more often than not as the definitive solution. These, from a contemporary perspective, from our perspective right now, was not a healthy situation for science, one with which Aristotle himself would surely never have agreed. It took several centuries of trying to reconcile new emerging knowledge with Aristotle's philosophy before limitations of answering all scientific problems by appeal to his authority finally became intolerable. The invention of the telescope by Galileo Galilei. Let's look for a photo of Galileo Galilei in Wikipedia Commons because this is free. There. Bigger photo. There. The invention of the telescope enabled researchers for the first time to study the stars and planets surrounding us in space. As Galileo, a contemporary of Descartes, reports in his pamphlet, The Starry Messenger, the moon is pitted with craters and filled with mountains, much like the Earth, and planets in the distant reaches of the solar system, Jupiter and Saturn, have moons, again, very much like the Earth. The implication is that other heavenly bodies are not merely different from the Earth, which seems to make the Earth just one planet among others. As a consequence of this analysis of essence as natural function, Aristotle concludes that it is the nature of the material element Earth to go to the center of the universe. He reasons that therefore the Earth, as the only repository of Earth, must be located at the center of the universe so that all heavenly bodies made of ether rather than Earth move about in space above the Earth. The fact that these inferences are all mistaken and that Aristotle, despite his genius, has gotten things wrong was now plain for anyone to see with their own eyes through an 8-powered telescope, nor was this Aristotle's only false conclusion. Based on false assumptions, as we might expect, of early attempts to explain the world of nature. Let's go back to Descartes. The rediscovery of Aristotle and his prestige as an infallible scientific authority, followed by his failure to correctly answer all scientific problems, is a crucial background to Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy, the text that we will be commenting. Where authority fails as a general rule, it becomes necessary to search for new and better methods of establishing truths. Descartes is one of a number of philosophers at roughly this time who reached to the new scientific discoveries of Galileo and other proto-modern scientists. We find similar responses on the part of Francis Bacon, whose novum organon, literally the new machine, like Descartes' reflection on first philosophy, makes an explicit reference to Aristotle. Aristotle's treatises on logic and methodology were collected by a first-century editor under the title The Organon, and Bacon proposes to replace it with a new organon, thus novum organon. Bacon's treatise proposes what by contemporary standards appeared to be a rather naive method of empirical discovery. The idea is to collect and organize data for the sake of solving scientific problems without offering guidelines about how to choose what is relevant and ignore what is irrelevant, or how, in the absence of theory, to organize whatever data is collected so that a theory can emerge. Bacon's recipe for advancing knowledge nevertheless seemed revolutionary at the time rather than simply looking for the answers in Aristotelian's writings. Similarly, Truth, 1637, and Meditations on First Philosophy, 1641, fit into the same category of methodological manifesto for the new age of modern post-Aristotelian science. In this text, Descartes, also a distinguished philosopher, a practicing mathematician and scientist, rethinks the requirements of successful scientific methodology from a philosophical standpoint and charts a new course for scientific philosophical inquiry as a reason against an entrenched Aristotelian scientific orthodoxy. Descartes' philosophy and his program for revitalizing natural science are, in fact, also worth mentioning to be different from Bacon's in many ways. If you like this lecture on the meditations, please check the playlists on the meditations on first philosophy in the YouTube channel, Samo't sa Simula. If you have not subscribed, liked, or followed this channel, please do so that we can continue this work of commenting philosophical texts. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.